Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Now, it's one of those things that we all deal with, but we deal with it in different ways. But it's the thing that's holding you back from moving your life forward. It's putting the blocks up. We're talking about fear. What does fear look like for you? We're going to talk about that today. Going to be insightful. She's already piqued my interest before we even got on here. We had a brief conversation. I'm thinking about things that she said and applying it to my life, and I'm sure you're going to do the same thing as we talk to a wonderful person that dispenses therapy, psychotherapy for children, adults, all. Susie Engel is back with us. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Steve. Thank you. Thank you. Really happy to be here.
Good to have you back here. And this is those moments where you make us think. And the fear thing, yeah, we've talked about fear before, false evidence appearing real. We've talked about how on average, and they do surveys on this all the time, like 90% of the things we fear never transpire, never take place. We're worrying about something we don't need to worry about. But I guess fundamentally, what does fear look like to each one of us individually? I never thought of it until you said it before, and it has a different look to it. And the first thing that comes up, like I thought, okay, public speaking, we have a fear of it. Is it really a fear, or is it just uncomfortableness? You know what I'm saying? It makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to do it. So that's a fear. Is it really a fear? Is it really a fear? I don't think it's a fear. I think it's, yes, it can feel like a fear, but you're mostly uncomfortable about doing it, right?
Yeah, I like that. Even that. I mean, first of all, it's great to discuss things that pique our interest and stimulate our thought process. And the thing is, fear is an experience, right? So what might be fear-provoking for me might be very different than what is fear-provoking for you, and that goes for anybody else in the audience. But I do think this, if you're going to talk about something specific like public speaking, yes, I mean, it all depends what people have learned about fear. How has each individual conceptualized fear? So if I'm afraid, but my family or my social circle comforts me and validates, like, oh, it's natural to feel that way. Maybe it's not full-blown fear. Maybe I am uncomfortable. Maybe it's something new. Maybe I'm not sure what to expect. And that brings up that stress response that we talk about almost every podcast. But then if somebody else says, this is a very important presentation, your grade relies on it, or you're speaking in front of these important people, and you've already come to the stage with self-consciousness or judgment, harsh judgment in your history, not yours specifically, I'm just speaking like that. Mm-hmm. You're going to feel more pressure because somebody's already set the stage for when you're on stage in public speaking. If you feel confident in yourself, and it doesn't matter who you're speaking to because you know your business, then public speaking is going to be uncomfortable, but it isn't going to be necessarily fear-provoking.
Uncomfortable, yeah.
You said.
Why would we feel that way? It's a plethora of what ifs. Go with the public speaking thing. I know what I'm talking about. This is going to be all right. But what if I lose my train of thought? And what if the microphone breaks? And what if somebody laughs at me? Or what if I say, anybody have any questions? And nobody says anything. And I'm like, that it's the what ifs.
But the what ifs are part of each
the fuel?
Individual. What?
The fuel for the fear?
Well, definitely the fuel for the fear, but it's also the what ifs, in my opinion. This is just my opinion, which I think is educated and expert. The what ifs also stem from our experiences. So what if I was a little nervous or scared about something when I was very, very young? And what if, just to to beat this, what if somebody shamed me and said, "Oh, don't be such a baby. What are you afraid of?" Even if I was a baby, So now I'm thinking, is there something wrong with me if I feel fear? Is there something wrong with me if I do this again? Am I going to fail and be shamed? Am I going to fail and feel okay and get myself up and dust myself off? But when you say the what ifs, I think that that's a whole other category of learned, informative, or misinformed information from somebody who's uptight.
All right.
So if I'm a 6-year-old and I got in trouble in elementary school because this is a true story. I couldn't stop laughing in the cafeteria, and they sent me to the principal. And everybody was like, "Ooh, what if your parents find out?" Ooh, and this is like 6-year-old, first grade. And oh, are you really going to tell your mom and dad, or are you going to keep it a secret? This is like all these other kids have families like cray, right? And I'm like, of course I'm going to tell my parents, because I don't think that it's the worst thing in the world that I got in trouble for not being able to control my laughter.
Susie, the same thing happened to me. I am not kidding. Second grade, Mrs. Baruch, I just started bursting out laughing. She wasn't having it. She takes me by the hand, brings me up to the front of the classroom, swats my butt. Today, that would put you in jail. But back then, and now I'm in front of the class, and I told my mom, and it turned into a big thing where there was a hearing and I was taken out of her class. There was a chance she might have been fired, la, 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 la. And fast forward to my adult life, and this is true, I've been with people very close, even partners in life, right? And I would get, "How come you don't burst out laughing when you're watching a movie or something?" I'm like, "Well, it's funny, but I'm not a laughing kind of person." Maybe it came from second grade.
Absolutely. So then I go home. First I had to go to the principal's office. I wasn't scared. I wasn't nervous. And the principal just said, "What was happening? How come you're here?" And I said, "Oh, in the cafeteria, they put the sign up, but I couldn't stop laughing because there was something really funny. I wish I remembered what it was because it was really, really funny." And I'm 6 years old. And the principal said, "Oh, that's a good thing to laugh and not be able to control laughter sometimes. Everything's okay." And so I went home and I told my parents, and he said, "Try to control yourself when you notice the signs." But he understood, he wasn't punishing me, double punishing me. And when I got home, I told my mother, and my mother said, "That's a funny thing to get in trouble for."
Yes.
It doesn't make sense to her, right? And so I do laugh very easily, which is kind of funny. But the reason that these two examples, yours and mine, are helpful for us and for the audience is because, you're bringing up the what ifs about public speaking, for example. I think public speaking, I just try to find 3 people I know, tell them to make eye contact and smile and nod the whole time so that I don't look at this bored audience who's disinterested. And I just focus on these people and I feel good.
Well, we could do a podcast on that alone where, the best thing to do is show up early. Even if you don't know everybody, you make a couple of friends. And, even if you're talking about Jimmy's tie, and if you're in the middle of speaking to the group, it's like, yes, well, you know what? I take my job seriously. And so does Jimmy, because of he takes his tie seriously. Take a look at that tie over there. It's just making that connection with people while you're doing your thing. So 100%.
Right. Instead of feeling isolated and scared to death alone on the stage or at the podium, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you see how the foundation of these experiences, and I don't mean to, um, you know, make big deals out of nothing. Like, but this is how we as individuals develop. It's from our experiences.
Mm.
It's
I'm
all
the
experience.
the what if thing is still sticking in my head because I'm even thinking when I shared with you about taking blood tests, and I'm good now, but I had a fear of them. But what was the fear? What if I pass out? What if I get queasy? It came from the what ifs. It was a series of what ifs, and I'm trying to think of fear situations that may not be what if connected, but I don't know if I'm trying to think of some.
Well, I mean, I think that what we were speaking of earlier is it doesn't have to always lead to what ifs. Sometimes fear, um, sometimes if somebody expresses fear, they're told that they are weak
Mm.
in one way or another. And if somebody is receiving that message and is not already, maybe on shaky ground with their resilience, because we're all born with resilience, but at some point it gets a little chiseled
Mm.
away or shaky or whatever it is for certain people. If we don't feel confident about ourselves and somebody transmits this message like, what's wrong with you that you're afraid of this? Or you started by saying 99% of what people anticipate as fear never happens. But if they're transmitted this message um, of shame, I feel like that exacerbates when they do feel a natural emotion of fear. Fear is a natural emotion, just like anger is. But if people are, called a big baby about it, then that's going to be layered every time they experience this natural feeling of fear. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I never thought of calling it an emotion. Fear is an emotion.
That's funny. Of course, it's an emotion.
What do I know? I don't think of it as an emotion, but
It's funny.
to you, a trained professional, but fear, I guess what else could it be?
You think it's a thing. Fear is a thing.
Yeah.
But it's an emotion. No, this is really a great
Yeah, because I don't put it
you're a layperson.
Right. I don't put it in the category of happy, sad, joyful, whatever. I don't see it in there. But this gets us back to what we originally started talking about, your relationship with fear. What is it to you? So if you look at it as an emotion and not this behemoth thing that's taking over you, fear, now it's I don't want to say tempers it. Maybe it's a little more friendly because it's an emotion, like sadness is an emotion. Do we know sadness? Of course we know sadness.
Yes.
Do you want sadness to be your best friend? You should have a relationship with things in your life. No, I don't want that to be my best friend, but we're connected. Same thing with money. They say you should have a relationship with money. I want money to be my best friend. We can be friends, but to look at fear that way as an emotion, I guess it all comes down to what's your relationship with fear?
Well, listen, I mean, you're bringing up a really good point, and I'm laughing not at you, but I'm laughing because it's just very funny to think. Well, what we're so now we're going to get broader. I'm sorry to take you down this like path, but now you're bringing up other emotions, and do we want them to be our best friends? Well, I would say so. And you're saying, no, we don't want sadness to be our best friend because then we'll be depressed. But that's not true. What I'm saying is let's not be phobic about all of these emotions. What if I feel confidence and somebody said, oh, don't get on your high horse or don't be a know-it-all? Then maybe that impacted me and I started feeling insecure and stupid because I can't show my smartness. or confidence, I should say. But what if I feel afraid and somebody says you're a big baby? What if I'm sad? And I mean, it's a beautiful thing to just be with our emotions,
And I get that, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't mean the sadness. I don't want. I would imagine doesn't need to be your best friend. It's an emotion, meaning
it's an emotion, not a friend.
Well, no.
Like Zelensky, we're not playing cards. What are you talking about, cards?
I mean it in that it's an emotion, so you're connected close to it, right? You're close to an emotion as opposed to a thing that many might view fear as. But if it's an emotion, I prefer sadness not to be a close, a good friend. It's a friend. It's there. It shows up every once in a while. Happiness and joy, they're welcome anytime. You guys are my friends in the emotional, wheelhouse. But this is different to look at fear as an emotion because now you're closer to it and maybe it's easier to process, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what I think is this. It doesn't matter what emotion we're talking about. We happen to be talking about fear. And I thought it's a very important topic because most people interchange fear and anxiety. And I would rather use the word fear than anxiety because anxiety is like some sort of societal label at this point. And I don't know, who's defining it, but whoever's defining it, I don't know. But if we're talking about any emotion, and there are millions of emotions.
Are there really?
Or spectrums. Let's say there's like a handful of categories, maybe the top 7, right? Anger, disgust, happiness or joy, sadness, fear. What else is there? I think lust is one of them.
That's one of my friends.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
And lust starts at a very early age, right? Like just like this euphoria of enjoyment.
Ms. Greenstein, my 3rd grade teacher, that was my first I really like her.
Yeah, which is adorable. And and it's natural. Like we're born with certain emotions that we don't have to learn. The problem is we're talking about today is when we go through life and we listen to others' reactions to us, then it becomes a learned, like what you're saying, a learned thing instead of just a personal emotion.
And we're learned to fear.
Oh, absolutely. And not all of us. Because at some point, you're going to find people who really aren't afraid of anything.
So about 5-8 years ago, there was, and I don't know where it came from, but you would see stickers everywhere. And they would say, no fear, right? Is that okay to say, no fear? Fear doesn't exist in my world. I have no fear. Is that a bad thing or a good thing?
No, I mean, it's just like maybe a mantra for certain people.
Sure.
Like don't let fear hold you back in life.
Don't let
fear if you want to open your own business or you want to invite a person out on a date, no fear, like go for it. Why would you, I think that there's another popular saying these days is called, it creates risk adversity. So people don't take the risk, not that I think it's a risk to ask somebody out on, if you're interested in somebody, I don't understand what the risk is, just to say, hey, want to get together. And if the person says no, it's not a whole huge measure of you. The person just said no. And then
but that's a hard one for many where it's a risk of rejection, rejection.
But where does the rejection come from? So rejection is an emotion. Also, rejection is a huge emotion. But if it comes from, I really wanted to go to whatever college I wanted to go to and I got rejected, or does it come from abandonment? Or does it come from childhood where people are not attuned to you and you feel like some sort of alien? So all these things bring us to these huge complicated conversations, but I think that we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about other people's um, judgments about your emotional experience.
But here's the thing. I had no idea that rejection was an emotion.
Yeah, I know. It's really interesting. And I think that that's just really interesting. You know, yeah, rejection is totally, I mean, rejection is also an action, right? When
Sure.
I don't know the grammatical thing right now because I'm like, my mind is shooting lots of information inside there.
Yeah, well, I
But
guess a verb.
I
I
do
mean,
know
it's
grammar.
it's something that takes place. It's a physical thing that takes place, right?
Yes.
Where sadness isn't a physical thing, I don't believe, because it's something you just experience, you interpret, but rejection is the only way to get rejected is if somebody rejects you. So there's something taking place. But again, I never looked at it as an emotion, but wow. And that's kind of what you said before. There are some core emotions, but then there are, I guess, sub emotions underneath those. And just like when they say that we have separate parts to our personality. And we're not talking about split personality, just separate parts of your personality.
Well, we're a whole system.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you're kind of speaking like, oh, rejection is also, it's not just an emotion, it's a thing that happens at you, but that doesn't hold true in the long run. It really is an emotion. It really is a feeling. I feel rejected. So if I feel like an insecure person and I see a group of kids on the playground or a group of people at the club, yucking it up, Susan Engel, I might feel left out. I might feel, where do I fit? Where do I belong? So it's all part of this spectrum of fitting and belonging and this social experience, which is also an emotional experience. But things provoke our emotions, but our emotions are already within us. So it's funny when somebody says, she's angry at me. And I always say, well, what if she's just angry? You're taking it as if she's angry at you, but what if she's just plain angry? But anyway, I'm getting off track.
But it's definitely makes you think about how you think. Yeah, I didn't see
how you feel.
And how you feel. And what are emotions? Feelings.
And maybe that's the thing. Maybe what we're talking about is when we feel, it jumps to how we think. And that's the judgment, where the what ifs creep in. Or I better not tell anybody that I'm sad about this or that I'm scared about this because they might call me a big baby.
Right. I'll be judged.
Be judged. Right.
Wow. So interesting. We started talking about fear and went in 50 different directions, but all good because it's a wake up. It's a wake up in terms of, we started with, what is fear to you? What is fear? And it's gone, and we start talking about emotions. And I never thought any of this. Wow. It's so cool.
That's great.
Yeah. The mind is pretty amazing, but it comes down to feelings, what we feel, how we feel. How do we connect with you? What's the best way?
My website, which is my name, Susan Engel. So it's SUSANEngel-LCSW, licensed clinical social worker.com.
And I find interesting too that we both had an issue with laughing in, first and second grade, and how it was vastly different the way it went because, and I think that goes back to when we talked about you could have two children that are, starting out in life as babies, but they interpret things differently as life goes on. Could have been the same situation, but it's different. They feel different.
But it wasn't even an interpretation. Your experience was like a thing. Like they made a big deal about something that's typical that young kids would do, which is laugh uncontrollably. My situation was handled like, this is not a thing.
But I wonder if you were in the chair when Mrs. Baruch came by and you were laughing and she did the same thing, if you would feel the same.
I wonder if I would be a very different person because
Right.
I think, maybe I wouldn't laugh so easily.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. But that's not from within me. That's from Mrs. Baruch.
And outside influence.
No offense, Mrs. Baruch.
I've never forgot her name, and I don't know. It's
funny.
Yeah, and by the way, when I got a different second grade teacher, I can't even remember that teacher's name. It's like I guess
that
I
says
didn't.
a lot too.
Well, I have a belief, and we're out of time, that we typically remember negative memories when we're younger. When you go back to your first thoughts, there could be, for the most part, negative.
Oh, I don't know.
Think about that, and we'll reconvene. But I think it's because it's to protect you. Why are you remembering those? Why don't I remember the name of the teacher that came in to save? And
but who are the people who remember the good stuff?
I don't know.
Well, there are people who remember the good stuff.
Do we remember more of the bad stuff?
I don't know. I don't think so at all.
Interesting.
But we're out of time anyway. Don't get me started.
It's like jump down that rabbit hole. Always wonderful talking with you. Lots of epiphanies, lots of insight, and looking forward next time.
Thanks, Steve.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Gotta get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.